Welcome to Star Potential, a podcast where we explore the meaning of our existence while having a few laughs and sometimes tears through stories from the road of life. I'm your host, Julie Jo Hughes. As a stage performer, my life is quite literally about song and dance. I believe that life here on Earth is a playground for discovery, not a contest to be won. We ask questions together like, how do I evolve my consciousness? And how do you sing a passionate ballad when there's an old guy in the front row with his balls showing? True story. Stick around for these fun conversations. Hello, and welcome back to Star Potential. I'm your host, Julie Jo, and today I am going to dive into a very personal and vulnerable story. It's honestly the catalyst for what set this podcast in motion. We're often going to talk about how the painful things we move through end up being the catalysts for change in our life and ultimately propel us through something that helps us discover something truly beautiful. And I feel like this painful story that I moved through helped me remember how to listen to my own voice. It helped me tune back into my intuition. It helped me connect to the part of myself that was wanting to do some meaningful work in the world that could serve the collective. And ultimately, it helped me have the courage to launch this podcast, a platform where I could truly be myself and I could integrate these pieces of myself that I had buried or thought were not worthy or that made me not good enough just as I am, and instead helped me bring those pieces together and realize that the most authentic version of ourselves is the most beautiful gift that we have. And by understanding and learning about it more fully every single day, expanding our self-awareness, expanding our higher perception of what's going on within ourself allows us to be a better member of society, a better friend, a better family member, and ultimately helping the collective to raise our consciousness so that we can live in a more peaceful, unified world. And I truly believe that the biggest gift that any of us can give to our collective is to truly know ourselves as well as we possibly can. And so that is an ongoing thing that we work on every single day on this earth. And I believe that having this podcast is one way that I am beginning to step into the true embrace of who I am as a multifaceted individual that, yes, has certain gifts and talents as we all do, but really just by embracing myself in all my quirks and hopefully inspiring someone else to do the same thing, to fully embrace who you are with all of your quirks. And in turn, you will inspire someone else to do the same. Because when we all can offer our best versions of ourselves, we just all get along better, right? And we all can rise to higher heights than we could if we're all just over here lost in our own stuff. So the story that I'm going to tell you today is one where a little girl who had seen herself as someone who entertains the world grows up to start pursuing this passion, somewhere gets kind of lost along the way, starts losing the heart in it, but is still pushing forward based on those old ideals that she was clinging to, and ultimately loses that gift in the fact that my voice disappeared completely, and then I was left with, who am I now? And as you can tell, I got it back, but it was not quite so simple. So that's the story we're going to dive into today. We're going to rewind about 6 years. At this time, We were a new family of four. My husband and I were living in Queens, New York. New York was the first place I lived where I truly felt alive. I felt like I belonged there. I went there to find myself, and we'll dig into more of that in future episodes. But I really felt like I would find myself in New York, and I really did feel like New York helped me begin to come home to the truest version of myself that I had kind of lost during my 20s. And as I stepped into this more embodied version of myself, now I was married and had a 4-year-old son and a newborn daughter. And 8 months after this new baby was born, we decided to pick up everything and relocate to Orange County, California. Now, working in the performing arts and my husband working as a personal trainer meant we both had the kind of jobs where we only get paid when we're working directly with a client or doing freelance work. And so it meant that when we relocated all the way across the country, suddenly we're both starting from scratch again. Okay, now we're going to fast forward a bit again. That first year was really hard. We were both just pounding the pavement, trying to get ourselves out there. But remember, we also had a 4-year-old and a newborn. Well, at this point, she's 8 months old, right? And so navigating, what does that look like being there for the kids and helping them navigate a whole new life, but also trying to reinvent our careers from scratch. We didn't have any connections when we came out here other than my husband relocated within the same company. But as a personal trainer, it's not like you arrive and they hand you your array of clients. Like you start from scratch again. So he was spending a lot of hours just being in the gym, not necessarily with clients, which means we're making like minimum wage certain days, And then for me, it meant going out and singing a lot for free just so people can hear me and see me, even though I'm holding this value of I'm not a newbie. I've been performing my entire life, but kind of finding the balance between eating some slices of humble pie and also knowing your worth at the same time. So now we're going from the time we moved, we're going to fast forward about 4 more years. And at this time, there had been at least 2 bands that had started kind of formulated with me as the lead singer and trying to get these bands off the ground. They're cover bands, and we're taking certain gigs that are not the most ideal, but we feel like we're getting the band's name out there and doing all these things in the name of I want to keep performing. I want to be able to support my family when I'm out and singing, and kind of always toggling between I'm so much better than this. I can't believe I'm working for this kind of pay tonight. And then on the other side of, I understand that I have a beginner's mindset and it's okay because I'm new in this area and I just want to meet people and I just want to get out there. And so kind of oscillating between those 2 extremes and sometimes getting lost somewhere in the middle. And I mostly lived on the side of, I have faith that these steps that I'm taking each day are leading to something bigger. But I somehow still had this belief that if I would kind of martyr myself through these gigs that I was too good for, that the universe would reward me by at some point coming into some much higher paid work or something on a bigger platform that was going to lead to higher paid work or something. And I just felt like I was spinning my wheels and nothing was really happening. I was doing all these gigs where we were performing into the wee hours of the morning. And not only was the pay not worth that at all, because I would come home exhausted, have a couple hours sleep, and then I've got little kids at home that get up at 5 or 6 in the morning. So, maybe 2-3 hours of sleep. And now I got my mom hat on and I am trying to be a present and wonderful mother. And it's really hard to do that when you're really, really exhausted. Paired with the fact that the work itself was not even fulfilling to me. It's at least something if you feel like I'm sacrificing my personal health right now, and I'm sacrificing the amount of the capacity I have to give to my children when I am home the next day, which they deserve, of course. They deserve the full version of me. And sacrificing that if you feel like the work that you're doing is just so fulfilling and you know it's your life's purpose and you just can't wait to go out and do it. Only I didn't have either of those things. I was feeling like an awful mother, and I was feeling like this work is just not worth it. This is not why I do live performance. The kinds of places that we were playing are the kinds of places where the volume is up just loud enough so that people can tell that you're a live person and not a radio, but it's so low that if you didn't see me physically moving around the stage, you wouldn't even know that. We're basically glorified background music. And I'm wearing these in-ear monitors. In my head, I'm melting faces, right? Like, as far as the conditioning of my voice, I'm in probably the best vocal shape of my life. Feel like, I picked all these big diva songs and like I'm doing this awesome job, and people are just going to be so amazed at my gift that I'm able to share and bring these songs to life. Only they're not even hearing me. They're just at the casino playing slot machines or whatever. It was not the type of work that is why I went into performing. And I had reached much higher heights, so to speak, earlier in my career. And so it felt like I was taking a major step backwards. And I just felt like everything in my life was sliding downhill and not the direction I wanted to be heading. And I felt like I had been living in that spot for way too long already. However, with all of this going on, I still was kind of martyring my way through it. I wish I could say I just had this powerful belief that if I guess that is what I had. I was hanging on, I was clinging, is what I was doing, to this belief that the universe kind of owed me a turn of the tides. The universe should be able to see how hard I'm working and how much I'm sacrificing. Why is the universe not rewarding me for all of this sacrifice? It's so silly when I say it out loud now, but I still wasn't listening. And I continued this pattern of coming home and complaining about my work and being tired and not being a present mother and not being the best wife and really just kind of failing in all areas of life, to be honest. All the while putting on a smile and a persona that I love getting to sing for a living and I love being a mother, and this is just a chapter and everything will work out okay. And it just felt dishonest. There was a part of me that knew I wasn't living my truth, and I had this deep, deep call that you love performing and you love being a mother. So why are you putting yourself in this situation where you're setting yourself up to fail is what I was doing. You're not setting yourself up to be a good mother. You're not setting yourself up to thrive in your performances because you're saying yes to stuff out of some kind of martyr belief or something. You're not actually doing the work you want to be doing and that lights you up. And in that, I was doing everyone a disservice. Myself, my bandmates, my husband, my children, all the people I dealt with on a daily basis. When we're not honoring the truest version of ourselves, then we are doing a disservice to everyone around us as well, because we never just exist in isolation. We exist in relationship to those around us, to the environment around us, everything. If you start looking around in your world, there is a symbiotic relationship inherent in everyone and every living thing. We'll dive into that more in other episodes as well. But to tell you the breaking point of this story, there was a weekend coming up where we had the band that I was performing with most of the time had a local gig on Friday night, and on Saturday night we had a big casino gig, a big, this wasn't big. It was a casino gig. Okay. I say big because you never want to sever that relationship. If you decide it's not for you, you want to leave on loving terms in your integrity. But anyway, that's why I called it big. Just like any relationship, you would want to walk out of with integrity and holding love and space for the other person on the end of that relationship, right? Or venue. And I knew that I was getting sick with something. When you use your voice for a living, you're very in tune with your vocal health. And I had all these telltale signs. I knew that I was getting sick. And so on Thursday, I was talking with the band leader and knew that I was not going to be able to do 2 shows that weekend. I said, I'm just not. I can feel it. The problem was, and this is where I have to take personal ownership, it's not that I had never discovered this problem before. I had seen it coming and brought it up multiple times, but where I went wrong was I didn't follow through and say, this is really important to me, that I have a choice when it comes to me being sick. It can't just be, it's not a good place to be in, between a rock and a hard place, that either I pay attention to my health and allow myself to rest when I truly need it. We're not talking a little tickle in the throat. We're talking like I'm full-blown sick. That would be one choice. Or the other choice is we have to cancel the show, make bad with the venue, make bad with the people who bought tickets or were planning to come to the show. It seemed like if I was really sick, that's what I was choosing between. And to me, that felt like, are you going to be selfish and let everyone down? Or are you going to sacrifice what's best for you because it will keep everyone else happy? And those just aren't good options. They're not good choices to choose from. And I did not proactively see to it that we did not put ourselves in that situation. There are many other things in hindsight that we could have set up so that I wasn't forced to make those kinds of decisions. But I digress. That was the situation. That was the choice I was faced with at that point in time. And against my better judgment, I said I would do the first show, but I knew that there was no guarantee I could get through the second one. So what happened was we brought in a little bit of help in the form of another singer for me that first night, but there was no way that I could just not sing because we had never prepped anyone for the song list that we do. And what happened was that I lost my voice by the end of that show, which I knew was going to happen. And I damaged my voice so badly that I was not even able to speak. I was not even able to whisper without pain for the next 6 days. I have never before lost my voice in my life, and it was absolutely terrifying. I was pulling all the tricks out. I was doing everything I knew to get my voice back, and it just wasn't. So we canceled that weekend shows. Another week went by. I was now like I could whisper and talk for maybe a few minutes a day, but as much as I pushed it, then it would set me back and I wouldn't be able to speak for 2 days again. So it was either I just had to be completely silent on like complete vocal rest, which anybody who has 2 small children at home knows what a monumentous ask that is. It was either complete silence and I might be able to buy myself maybe an hour of talking the next day before I lost it again. Or it was talking little bits throughout the day and just remain at the same level I was. This continued for not 1, not 2, not 3, but actually about 7 weeks. I saw multiple specialists. We actually had a trip planned to go visit my husband's family in Serbia. I saw a Serbian ear, nose, and throat specialist, and everyone who looked at me said, there's inflammation. I can give you more steroids. I can give you more antibiotics, but I don't, nobody really knew like what was causing it. The good news is they weren't seeing any nodes or anything like that are what singers' nightmares are made of. They weren't seeing anything like that, which was good news. But also they had nothing to offer me in terms of getting better. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know where it was coming from. They just said there's inflammation. ultimately, the straw that kind of broke the camel's back was the show that was coming up. It was a personal contact of mine. It wasn't really the band that had landed the gig so much, but it was my personal reputation that had landed that gig. The venue owner had called me a few months prior and said, "You've performed here with your other bands before. We'd love to get you back here. The regulars are asking when you're going to be back again. Can you bring one of your other bands here?" And they had graciously brought us in a couple times before. And this was the upcoming gig that was coming. And I knew that there was no light at the end of the tunnel at this point. And so I picked up the phone, and with the limited amount of voice that I saved up to talk to that venue owner, I had to admit that I couldn't deliver on my promise. And that is so, so hard for me to do. I consider the weight of my words with so much importance. And it just absolutely felt like killing myself to have to admit to him that I know this show is a week and a half away, but I don't think I can deliver it. I'm going to have to back out. And with that, there was a lot of grief. I immediately, when I hung up the phone, I started having a panic attack on the kitchen floor. These panic attacks had been happening. They had been happening for months at this point, but once I lost my voice, they were happening multiple times a day. Each time someone would check in, "What's going on with your voice?" Of course, the band was checking in because management needed to know what's going on with the band. Can we have this gig? Do I need to call this person? Our agent was getting super testy with us. Everyone was questioning my motives, thinking that I was just going through some kind of a phase and I just didn't feel like working. You know, they weren't seeing me because I was just holed up at home on the floor having panic attacks, and went into like full-blown identity crisis because I didn't understand what was wrong. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought, maybe I'll never. If you use your voice for a living, then you can absolutely relate to this fear. Anytime you've been like really sick, you start to have this question: what if my voice never fully comes back? What if I never recover from this? What if I can never sing again? What I started asking, what if I can never speak again? I was also a voiceover artist. I did all kinds of work doing children's animation, doing narratives for different things. And I thought, let alone singing, what if I can never speak again? And then just as a mother, like I couldn't even read my kids' stories before bed, which was our long-standing tradition from the time both kids were babies. We have this family tradition where we read books for at least 30 minutes every night before bed, and I couldn't participate. I could sit there, but I can no longer be the reader. And because I do have a gift for voices and things, my kids would often say like, "Well, nobody reads like you do, Mom. And can you do the voices? And we're reading this book. You have to do the voices. We can't read this book if you don't do the voices." And I started asking myself, like, what if I can never do the voices again? You know, even just a little thing like that. It was not a little thing for me. And so after 7 weeks of not having my voice and all these panic attacks, I really felt like this was a bottom point for me. And I just had to let go. Nothing that I was doing to try to control the situation was bringing me any sort of sense of control whatsoever. So instead, I surrendered. And I said, okay, maybe I'll never get my voice back again. Maybe I have to completely reinvent myself. Maybe the essence of Julie Joe is not just this voice and this persona and this label of singer, this label of mother, this label of voiceover artist. Hopefully, in my surrender, I will find that the essence of me is much more than the sum of all of those parts. And I let go. And I decided that I could no longer keep the band waiting on me. That was another hard conversation, and I could not even have a conversation, so I had to text it, which I hate having to text something so monumental, and said, I don't know what's going on with me. but you guys can't just go on. Like, I'm not coming back. And they were willing to wait for me. And I just said, I don't know. I got to figure myself out. I'm not coming back to the band. And 2 days later, I woke up with a spontaneous, miraculous, full recovery. My voice was completely intact. It had been there waiting for me to honor my truth, which was that for some time I had been feeling out of alignment. For some time I had been feeling called to find the joy and the meaning in my work again. For some time, I had been called to be honest with all the people around me. I had been being called to honor the part of me that's able to say, I have loved this experience and I love each of you that I work with. And this is not a personal reflection, but I am brave enough to say that I want to do something different. It's time for a different chapter for me. But until it was like I had forgotten how to listen to the voice of my heart. I had listened to the voice of my head and the voice of reason for so long that I had completely tuned out that deeper part of me that always knows what's best for me. And in doing so, I not only hurt myself, but I hurt everyone around me too. So after I didn't stop crying for like the next 2 days, I was so grateful and so overwhelmed. And then there was a guilt there too. Like, do I even deserve to have this voice back? Like, I treated you so poorly. This higher part of myself that has always been my guiding compass, I just totally tuned you out. And how gracious of you to bring my voice back. I don't know if that's the higher version of myself. Is it God? I don't know. But for some reason, I feel like I was given a second chance to use my voice. And I knew that I couldn't take that lightly. And I had to use my voice to do work that felt meaningful to me and that I felt was serving the collective, because I do truly feel that my voice is one of my biggest gifts. And I want to use that voice to serve the collective, to feel like I'm doing meaningful work in the world. And so here we are. Star Potential is born. And that was the launching of this podcast is occurring a few months short of 2 years after I lost my voice. So it's not something that happened overnight, but I can tell you that it's been brewing since the fall of 2023. And when I started feeling these calls to do something more meaningful, I just wasn't sure what that looked like. It took a while. And for the first time in my life, I was okay being in the pause. I was okay just being myself. As my friend Shiro says, we are human beings, not human doings. And for so long, I felt that if I wasn't working nonstop from the time I opened my eyes till I closed my eyes, that I wasn't earning my place in the world. This is a true belief that I had. It may sound ridiculous to some, but that's truly what I believed. My husband pointed this out to me one time. He said, "You feel guilty going to bed at night, and that is a problem." Like, do you understand that sleep is an essential part of our human health, and you see it as like a right that you have to earn? And I couldn't argue. I was like, absolutely. I have to earn my sleep. If I haven't gotten enough work done that day, I should be up working, accomplishing things, not sleeping. And now that sounds ludicrous to me. But that was the belief that I held for the majority of my life, that I held this huge potential. Even as a little girl, growing up in a rural, small town, I didn't even grow up in the town. I grew up on a farm 10 miles outside of the small town of 1,500 people in southwest Iowa. And when you have aspirations of being an actress and singer and living on the coast, that's not like a super common chosen profession for kids that grow up in southwest rural Iowa. And so often I would get these comments like, oh, you're really going to be a star one day and you have so much potential and you're going to go out and do big things. And I really took that to heart. And up to this point in my life, whatever I did, it felt like it wasn't good enough. No matter how good it felt, that dopamine or that good feeling was always immediately overshadowed by this voice that was saying, yeah, but I mean, anybody could have done that. Like, you could have tried harder. You could have done better. You could have practiced more hours. You could have gotten up earlier. You could have gone to bed later. You could have made yourself look prettier today. You could have eaten less junk. You could have eaten more vegetables. You could have taken better care of your skin, and on and on and on and on and on. And I'm sure you know that voice because you have that voice too, your version of it. But that is the voice that keeps us alive and just not dying. It's not the voice that keeps us living and expanding and growing. So there's a difference between living and just not dying. And I was listening to the voice that was keeping me from just not dying. And so when I began to embrace this idea of the pause, that there are seasons in life, and perhaps I was in a season of recovery and reflection, I, for the first time in my life, felt permission to be in that space. And I said a lot of no over the next 6 to 12 months after that. And for the first time, I felt okay saying no to things that didn't feel in alignment for me or didn't feel like they were necessarily serving my highest good. And I started to realize that it was possible to say no to someone in love. It was possible to be in integrity with myself and also care about the other person. It was okay to say, I'm so honored that you thought of me for that. It doesn't work well for me. I'm not going to be able to say yes to that, but I do appreciate you asking. And maybe you could ask this person, or, here's something else you could do. Or if I didn't have anything to offer in that realm, I would just say, I wish you all the best and thanks again. And then practicing some of that and going, okay, that actually feels pretty good. It's scary at the time. And then when you're on the other side of that, you're like, wow, it is possible to honor myself and others. I'm not actually being a bad person by doing what's best for me. And sometimes when I wasn't sure what to do because I was becoming an entirely new person is what it felt like. Just coming back to what is the next right thing for me to do? When it came to making that decision of calling off that last show before I quit the band, as I was finishing this panic attack, and my husband just held space for me as I moved through it. When I kind of was able to move through the actual physical part of the panic attack, which is very gripping. If you have panic attacks, then you know how you're really just frozen, and you just have to let what's going on in your body happen. There's not really a way to stop it in that moment. In fact, the resistance of what's happening can actually make it worse and last longer. You just have to fully give over to the panic attack and tell your body, yeah, I understand. You're scared right now. And focus on exactly what is happening. Okay, my heart is pounding out of my chest. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I can't breathe. And instead just kind of changing the narrative and going, I have a smaller capacity of breath expansion right now. I have a smaller capacity of breath expansion right now. I'm just going to breathe as much as I can because this is all I'm able to do in this moment. And by fully surrendering to that, the panic attack runs its course and you're able to come back to the present moment. Eventually, your breath returns. And I said, I don't know what to do about this gig. And my husband asked me, what is your highest priority right now? What is the thing that's most important to you right now? And I said, getting better, of course. Like he was asking me such a stupid question. And he said, getting better. Okay. Is doing this gig in 2 weeks going to serve your highest priority right now of getting better? And when he put it so simply like that, there was nothing I could answer but no. That would not be the choice that would lead to my highest priority of getting better right now. And he said, okay, then I think you know what, I think you have your answer. And I picked up the phone and I called the venue owner and I called off the gig. And then I called off the band. And sometimes it's too much to weigh all the consequences of what might be coming after that. Sometimes we truly just have to tune into what is the next right thing. Not even right, because that's another thing I've been walking through, is that there is no right and wrong. There is just different opportunities for learning and growth. There is no wrong choice or right choice. So in that moment, all I could do was identify what is most important to me in this moment. What am I looking to, address right now? Is saying yes to this decision serving that? If the answer is no, then you should go with a no. So do you see how when we break it down like that, sometimes these decisions that feel so huge and like it's so much to move through, it carries so much weight. When we ask the question so simply like that, the answer can be so simple. And it can help us just move to the next tiny little baby step. And when we stay right there in the present moment of what do I need to do right now, right in this very moment, and I'll worry about next Tuesday. Sometimes we are in a state of fight or flight. Sometimes we are in survival mode and we have to make our decisions like that. But do you see how you can't dream? You can't live expansively from that place of survival. And so ultimately, we want to get ourselves out of that survival place so that we can go back to making decisions based on our wholeness and our abundance and our infinite potential. But when you're having a panic attack on the floor, you cannot think about your infinite potential. So what I want you to take away from my story and what I learned is that our body ultimately stores our traumas for us, current and past. And it also gives us warning bells when we are not in alignment with what is serving our highest good. We have to learn to listen for these signals, to tune in to what are our little tells that our body gives us when we're out of alignment. For everyone, it might be different. I have found a few telling cues for myself, and perhaps this will be helpful for you in your reflection. But I have noticed that when I'm presented with a situation that makes me feel really uncomfortable and I feel like it's headed in a direction that feels unsafe to me, I get this really prickly, almost like numbness feeling in my forearms, on the inside of my forearms. And I've had that for a long time, definitely for all of my adult life. I can't remember if I had that in childhood or not. If I speak unkindly or in a way that's not in alignment with who I want to be and the kind of mother and wife I want to be specifically, this is when it tends to show up. If I'm speaking to my husband or my children in a way that's unloving, which is not in alignment with how I want to interact with my family, I get this intense tingling in the crown of my head. It feels like an energy at the top of my crown and almost like permeating through my scalp. And it's almost like someone is knocking on the top of my head saying, hello, McFly, that's not how you want to talk to them. So that's another tell that I will get. If something really resonates with me, I often feel a warmness around my heart, so that part of my chest. If something feels unsafe to me, I often feel a closed off or choking feeling in my throat. If I feel really in tune with somebody that I'm communicating with, I will often feel a sensation in my third eye, which this is the area between your eyebrows. It can also be felt at the base of the skull. This is kind of the same energy center that will kind of give those same feelings. So I sometimes feel it at the base of my skull and sometimes here in the third eye. And if I am in a situation where I feel very scared, you probably have this one. I feel like it's a common one. It's a knot in, this would be like right under my rib cage. I feel like a tightness or a knot there. If I know that something is wrong and I don't agree with it, I'll feel it a little bit lower in the kind of base below. It would be like low belly, deep in the kind of intestinal area. That's where I will feel that. And when we say we get a gut feeling, that's the feeling I'm talking about. So those are just a few of my tells. You will start to tune into your own cues. But if you are not able to hear the voice of your intuition quite yet, this is a great place to start, is in your body. So start listening to your body, start paying attention to your body. Our body gives us so many clues through our nervous system that will help us if we're not able to cognitively recognize. Usually our body feels it first. I hope that by listening to my story, and ultimately, you can say that it had a happy ending eventually. There was a lot of pain and a lot of grief moving through many of those pieces of that story. But ultimately, it was a call for me to remember to listen to my higher self, to listen to my heart, and it doesn't guide you astray. So the hardest part sometimes is just learning how to hear that voice and how to know the difference between that ego voice and the higher self voice. I would love to continue this discussion with you. If you want to send me any questions that you might have in the comments, or you can send me a direct message on Instagram. I'm at the Julie Joe, however you want to pronounce that. But I would love to continue this conversation. It's now something that I'm passionate about, and I really want to help others learn to really tune in to listening to ourselves and the wisdom that we inherently carry, because there can really be big, big consequences when we don't. And I'm lucky and I'm so grateful that I was able to take this story of mine as a huge catalyst for implementing a positive change and shift in who I am and the work that I do in the world. I do still sing and do live performance with bands, by the way. I just had to shift a little bit of the piece that it plays in my life. I could no longer find my worth in the validation of that external work. So I was able to recognize over time and deep inner work of meditation, journaling. We will talk about a lot of those things here on Star Potential, the different tools that we can implement and use, and that I do use on a daily basis. But ultimately, by digging in to these practices of recognizing these patterns that are coming up for us, recognizing these tells that happen in our body, that we will learn how to tune in to the deepest parts of ourselves. We will learn how to align to our highest calling, to be able to tap in to our zone of genius, to be able to tap in to our unique abilities and gifts that we have in order to be the best version of ourselves, in order to be better serving the relationships that we take part in, and by better serving our community and our collective as a whole. Thank you so much for joining me today on Star Potential. I hope that you'll stick around. We've got lots of really insightful and exciting interviews coming up with some very valued guests that I have that are able to sometimes articulate much better than I can, or at least with a different lens, we'll say, than I'm able to. I love sharing those different perspectives with you on how we can integrate the fullest version of ourselves and step into our highest potential. Thank you for tuning into Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend or shout us out on Instagram with the tag @TheJulieJo. That's TheJuliejo. I made you a gift. Please visit us on Instagram to receive my Grounded in Gratitude singing meditation. Want a shot at our monthly giveaway? Please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts with your email or Instagram handle so we can give you credit. Thank you for your love and support. Until next time, keep shining your light. And that's a wrap.